And I will make Zana the host now. So Zana, welcome. Feel like you're at home. Feel like this is your classroom. These are your students. And we're all happy to hear more about what authentic leadership is. So welcome.
So I'm super happy to be here with you today. As Julia said, I'm super busy. Yes, and you're super busy as well. So we're all super busy to the point that we choose to be so. And I think it's really important to share moments like this, that we speak about important topics such as leadership is. This is not meant to be a talk so this is meant to be one big conversation with 105 people for the time being. So I'm hoping that you're going to find some of the concepts that I will bring to you interesting today, or at least interesting enough to jump into the conversation, so that we come out of this hour wiser all together. So does that sound like a plan? Can you give me a thumbs up or just some kind of a sign that it works? Okay, beautiful, perfect. So maybe if you could just go, I see that you love using chat, which is great. So if you could just go there and just put down what is it that you're bringing today and what is it that you're expecting to take away with you? So just a little bit of a conscious thinking of how we're entering the space, because authentic and servant leadership is about being conscious as leaders. So what is it that you're bringing and what is it that you're hoping to take away from today's conversation? I love calling it conversation. So if you can put that in the chat, I'm going to share in the meantime, what is it that I'm bringing? So I'm bringing really open heart and I'm bringing my passion. That's what I usually bring when I speak about leadership. And what I'm hoping to take away is to see some of your passionate faces once we dive deep into this conversation. And and when I say your passionate faces, I mean, I hope that this conversation unlocks something in you, something that you're going to bring into your world. And you will hear me speaking a lot about your world. When I say your world, I mean, whatever, our families, our teams, our group of friends, our communities, our countries, our continents, whatever you want to make up of the world thing. So it's basically our corner of the world where we spend our life, where we exercise our leadership. So you hope to get some knowledge. I'm starting to read. I will bringing my own understanding of what leadership is and take away more on what authentic and bold leadership is. Having some more knowledge, open mind. Oh, that's always a good idea to have open mind, especially when we speak about these things where there's not really a right and wrong answer. And that's something that I'd like to design with you at the very beginning. Here in leadership, there isn't really a right and wrong answer. There is your attitude, your views, and your openness to learn more and to practice that. I believe that you're going to learn something new. Yeah. Oh, wow. I'm bringing commitment. That's very important in leadership. If we're committed to learn, committed to grow, and committed to act, these are some of the most important things in leadership. Okay. All right. So because we only have an hour and we got a lot of things to do, so I'm going to start by sharing my screen, if that's okay. I think I can do it, Julia. Yeah. Am I doing it? Yes. Cool. Okay. So basically our topic for today is authentic and servant leadership. Obviously, in 60 minutes, we can't go to a super depth of this topic, but we can touch upon some most important things on the surface to unlock your thinking of these two important terms. And a little bit about myself, if I can move this. Yeah. So Julia already introduced me, and I'd like to introduce myself in terms of the pictures in a way. So if I start from the left-hand side, I'm going to say that I am a very proud author of this book, Bold Reinvented, in which I offer the concepts that I've learned about leadership and a lot of my personal stories as well, how I had the opportunity to exercise leadership. As you can see, my company is called Bold Leadership Culture, which tells a lot about what is it that I believe in, I actually believe in creating bold leadership culture all over the world, in which we can, what does that mean actually? Culture in which we can step into our authentic leadership, in which we can completely honor our values, but for what? To be in service of our worlds. That's where the whole culture comes in. So as leaders, we're never alone, right? Somebody told me once, if you are a leader, and there's no one following, there's no one there, then you're just going for a walk. You're not leading anything or anyone. And it was really an eye-opening thing for me, understanding that whatever is really important for us in our leadership is something, I'm just looking at this comment, is something that we cannot do alone. Thank you very much for this comment. I'm open to learn about community concern, because for me, that's what leadership eventually is all about. How concerned we are about what's happening in our communities and how we can act on that. And the rest of these pictures are actually showing my sort of past life. I was a corporate communication director in an oil and gas industry. I had some lovely moments there and I had some challenging moments there. And it's really nice to not to just be speaking about leadership, but to have the opportunity to experience real functional leaders and be one of them. And the rest of it, you can see my family there. You can see my husband, my son, my stepson, and you can see me in one of the workshops where I move my hands a lot and I speak a lot with passion. And you can also see a picture of me just being there with myself somewhere in the middle of the nature. So leadership is about being among other people, and sometimes leadership is about being alone. Not because we can't be with other people, but because we need that time for ourselves to self-reflect and to become more intentional and more conscious about what is it that we want to bring to our communities as leaders. So that's a little bit about me. And now I have a question for you. Are leaders born or made? What would you say? If I ask you to put your answer in a chat to this kind of opening questions, now this is going very quickly. Some leaders are born, others are made and born. Yeah. So I can see your answers going in a direction that they're both born and made. And here is my view. From one perspective, I feel this is both correct answer. I think leaders are born, but in the perspective that we're all leaders. So in that sense, yes, leaders are born, because we can all step into our own leadership. And that requires from all of us to learn, which means that basically, once we come to this world, through learning, through our development journeys, we can all be made into leaders. So having said that, I can clarify with this. I don't believe the leaders are born in a way that there's nothing else required for them to learn or to go through or to develop in order to really exercise their leadership. So I want to offer now 2 quotes. One of them says, leaders aren't born, they're made. And they're made just like anything else, through hard work. And now we can debate here what the hard work really is. Is that really the hard work, or is it a committed work? Or what does it mean for each and every one of us? When I read this quote, many times I think of this hard work as a change. We made into leaders through a process of change. And that's why our experience of that can be, this is hard, because change is hard. And then thinking about that, I came across another quote, which I really like, that says, you don't need to change yourself you need to come home to yourself. And that changes everything. Now, here we're already tapping into authentic leadership. Authentic leaders come home to themselves. Wow, I love some of your comments. Hard work here can mean getting up after every failure and working on yourself to be a better leader one more time. This is a wonderful perspective of hard work. Yes, getting up every time you feel, this was a failure. So differentiating between this might have not worked and I am a failure, right? So making a clear distinction between these two. So it's not I am a failure, but it's actually this didn't work. I need to get up and I need to continue. Hard work is the journey of life that shapes our convictions very much. Now, somebody here is already ahead of my presentation because we're going to step into our convictions and our beliefs and what's happening there. Is it Wangari? Do I pronounce your name correct? Do you want to share a couple of words? What's coming up for you when you read these quotes? Oh, do I need to unmute you? Can you unmute yourself? Oh, is it working?
Yes, I
Yay.
can.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah, when they say hard work, I am thinking that nobody came to work on you to become a leader, but the life that you have gone through, the phases of life, the hardships and everything else has shaped your conviction that makes you to be a leader now.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah.
So it comes out when I'm listening to you, Wangari, I'm thinking about it's our choice as leaders to step into every experience, learn from it, and allow it to shape us as leaders.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Lovely to thank you for sharing that with us. Okay, so if we move forward, having a little tech moment. Oh, here we go. So if we move forward to actually be on that note that you mentioned, Wangari, there. So what's happening with our conviction? Okay, Maureen, is it the hands up? I am so sorry. I'm having a little bit of a tech moment here. I can't find you now to actually unmute you. Julia, is there any possibility for you to help, or shall I just move on? Let's move on. Okay, cool. So basically, now we've come to the topic of a leadership development, basically. So if leaders are made, that means they need to go through a process of leadership development. Now, what does that really mean? And maybe even more importantly, what gets in the way in that journey, right? What do you think gets in the way in that journey? Let's hear from some of you. What would you say? And you can put it in the chat if it's easier. We get in our own way. Wow, lovely. Yes, we get in our own way. In the first part of my book, I say that leadership development starts by confronting yourself first. So it's us who get in the way. Yeah, we fear. Yeah, a lot of things. We fear whatever, failure or rejection or vulnerability. So we have self-doubts. Exactly. We have certain perceptions. We call them assumptions, right? Fearing what other people will say about us. So it's in a way fearing being judged. So also notice that when we speak about all of that, it sounds like something that we call an inner game of leadership. And now here is a little teaching moment where I would like to differentiate between outer game and inner game of leadership. And if for a moment you look at this slide, you will see that this outer game, this what we call a domain of training, is quite small compared to the domain of development or the inner game of leadership. Or basically, it's just the top of the iceberg. And it consists of our knowledge and skills and some technical expertise and some experiences, kind of a hard stuff that we also have to learn, especially to be functional leaders in a certain context. But leadership is very much about the inner game, about this domain of development. And now just notice what's written here in this a bit of the inner game. It's called the internal OS, the internal operating system, as if we were computers, and then the internal operating system that runs the show. So how do we make meaning of the world and the situation around us? And then based on that, how do we make decisions? And then how self-aware we are, what's our emotional intelligence, what's our inner beliefs, assumptions, or perceptions and convictions that you were calling them, what's really our self-identity, right? So as you can see, there's a lot more work in that area than in the outer game of leadership. And here is another little teaching point. One thing that comes from Ronald Heifetz. He's one of the authorities in leadership teaching. He teaches us about the difference between technical challenge and adaptive challenge. Now, what does that mean? Technical challenge is what we could be calling the domain of training. These are maybe the processes and some other skills that we need to learn to functionally be leaders. Right? These are maybe some of the things that have a clear solution, right? But there's also an adaptive challenge. And this is basically, how do I adapt my internal operating system to the new circumstances around me, to the requirements and the challenges of the context? How do I change the way I see the world? And one of the most beautiful and also the hardest thing about adaptive challenges is that we are the solution as much as we are the problem. So we're standing in our own way, if you like, and when we're open to learning, we can also be our own solution. So isn't that at the same time the most beautiful and the most challenging thing to face? Yeah, technical and adaptive challenges are important for the quiz, yes. And here are some of your thoughts. I think that internal operating system mostly has to do with social and cultural exposure. Absolutely, because it has to do with the way we were brought up, in the context in which we were brought up, and how in those circumstances we were conditioned to create some of our beliefs. And then how is it that we take these beliefs into any other context that we go to, where we basically meet different circumstances. And at a certain point, just like computers, we need an upgrade of our operating system, right? To be very simplistic here, so I'm not an IT person, so I don't understand half of these things, but to be very simplistic here, a computer from 10 years ago is not really able to run the latest applications today, because it needs some system upgrade. And the same thing happens with us when we are on leadership development. It means that we're facing a completely different context, far more complex, far more uncertain, far more ambiguous. And we need to upgrade our internal operating system to be able to respond in that context with our leadership. Yeah, it asks us to look inside of ourselves and make a deliberate decision to change. This is so well put, Eva, thank you. And make a deliberate, a conscious and an intentional decision to change. So just a couple of quotes here to kind of maybe stay with you or stick with you. Leadership greatness springs from within. So you've got to go in, right? Or the path to this higher level of consciousness, which is basically the upgrade of your operating system, actually goes through the painful depths of your comfort zones. What does that mean? This is what I believe. This is who I am. This is who I've always been. This is my comfort zone. And then along my leadership development journey, something kicks me out of that comfort zone. and I need to reinvent myself into a new image. Mindset, exactly, mindset. I need to change my mindset, which means I need to change. It's almost like I'm looking through a certain window, looking out into the world, and now I need to change that window. I need to start looking through a different window to be able to see things differently. Change lenses. Very good, Lorna. That's it. Okay, so what's the dilemma in this kind of journey, right? Yeah, so I'm kind of looking at your comments and looking at my slides at the same time. Oh, can you hear me well? Because I'm hearing some of the comments. Is it okay now? Yeah, okay, cool. So what's the dilemma? I'm learning to learn. That's very good. I love this, because many times we think, oh, there are so many things we need to learn in leadership development journey. And to say the truth, there are so many things we need to unlearn in leadership development journey to be able to learn something new. But in this whole process, there is one underlying dilemma in all of us. And it's this tension between fear and love, right? It's a little bit of what makes me really alive. What is it that I love? What is it that I'm passionate about? What is it that I would love to create? And what is it that I'm afraid of? What is it that makes me feel safe? That makes me kind of stop and not go across the line so that I can keep safe. So it's something that it's called the kind of a primary movement in between what we fear and in between what we love. And as leaders, we are constantly resolving this dilemma. Yes, it's stepping out of conformity. Thank you very much. So it's about, how do I leave the land of conformity and really step into my own land of integrity, honoring my values and bringing my authentic self out in the world. And here's the thing about this dilemma. It's not something that we can sort out, because it's human, it's normal. We all have that in everything that we do. Even if you take me in the middle of this lecture right now, I'm so passionate about what I do, what I speak. I love that. And at the same time, yes, there's a little fear inside. Oh, will this be of use to these people? Will they like it? It's a normal dilemma. It happens with all of us in every moment. We really need to normalize that. It's something superhuman. And thank you very much, Marianne, the will to take risk. Once we leave the land of fear and we step into the land of love, we're actually just said to ourselves, you know what? I am willing to take this risk because it matters. One little detail that I want to share with you, this is something that I read the other day as I was preparing also for the other lecture. There was an entry exam at Princeton, obviously for undergraduate students. And these students were getting the set of questions, but they were divided, set of the same questions, equal questions, but they were divided into two groups. And one of the groups were presented with the questions in this way. Let's see whether you really belong here. So it was presented in a way of being a threat. You know, let's see whether you can deal with these questions, whether you can answer them, whether you really belong here. While the other group, who got the very same set of questions, said, you know what, let's give you this challenge. Take this opportunity and give your best. And at the end, the group that was put in a threat-like environment resolved the test with a 72% of success. The other group that was put in a challenge environment resolved it with 90% of success, which can basically speak to the fact, how is it that we operate when we operate from fear, from something that we consider things to be threats and we need to sort of be protected? And how is it that we operate when we operate from accepting something, welcoming the challenge and allowing ourselves to be completely authentic and give our best? So that's just a little example of how feeling the fear or feeling the love can impact us in our leadership. So basically, to refer back to what some of you said before, willing to take the risk. This is part maybe of the best leadership definition that I've ever heard. Leadership is a risk that we choose to take in order to create what matters most to us. So leadership is always a risk. Without risk, there's no leadership. Because leadership always brings a certain change with itself. And that's always a risk. We're always confronting someone or something. And we're doing it because we're so passionate about creating something that we find the reason why it's worth to take that risk. Yeah. Joyce is saying here, be open to criticism. Yes, criticism is a form of feedback, right? So there are perspectives that we can take on criticism. There's a perspective that we can take, oh, I must not be criticized because it's going to paralyze me. Or there's a perspective to say, well, I'd love to hear that. I'd love to hear what is it that I can do better. One thing that my mentor taught me when it came to public speaking, and it was super important for me, kind of normalize things. It was this. He said, you know what, when you go on stage, and going on stage is a metaphor, mind you, we all go on stage for something, right? When you go on stage, there will be people who will really like you. You're going to inspire them big time. There will be people who really won't like you. They just won't find any value in what you bring. And there will be those people who won't even notice that you got on stage there. And it's really important to normalize all these kinds of feedback that you receive. As long as you're able to find that passion inside of yourself and say, you know what, it's still worth the risk. Yeah, never be afraid of feedback. A negative and positive criticism, it's just a source of information for us. So let's just check a little bit. Any comments or any questions so far that you'd like to share? How is this working? Does it make sense? Do you want to add something? Do you want to ask something? Anything? I can't see all of you. You can use the chat, or you can voice out. We good? Okay, okay. Okay, yes, we must be ready to be vulnerable and accept negative feedback. Vulnerability is a huge part of leadership. Hamisa, you raised your hand. Let's see. Yeah, can we hear you? Do you want to share something?
Yeah, I wanted to share what I have felt since I listened to you. I live with a disability. I come from a society where persons living with disabilities would be taken for sympathy all along their lives. And I have tried otherwise, because when I was growing up, I saw people begging on the streets. And I was asking myself, do I want to be where these other people are? Do I want to be taken the way they are taking me for? So I developed something that today I have known what it is. I started working hard. I made my own decision. I worked hard to where I am right now. And I've been leading in different ways, from childhood to almost 50 years right now. And what I've had today is what I've really been asking myself. Why did I think otherwise? And why am I here? And the rest of my colleagues with disabilities, the rest, those who I went to school with, they're not where I am. So today, in my life, I have had something I have never had. It had really given me encouragement. That it's a feeling, it's something that you need to build yourself upon. That's what I'm feeling from the start, from the time I listened to your video to now I'm listening to you. That's what have brought up. I'm from a society where persons living with disability are less, then women are less. So I'm both. I'm a woman and also a person living with disability. So I was a victim of sorry, we'll help you here, don't do this, you'll fall down. And when you fall down, and like everyone pays attention, but I developed a character where when I fall down, I laugh. Then the rest of the people laughed. So now they develop that when I laugh, they will only give me time to see how I'm going to raise up.
Yeah, yeah. You know,
they're not going to come and pull me the leg, the hands. That's what they do. But pulling me, it's hurting me. It's not helping me. So when you give me time, I'll do whatever I can, but I'll still stand up. So thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Hamisa, for sharing this. So what I've just heard from you is something that I deeply believe in. I was taught that kind of premise when I learned to be a coach, that people are naturally creative, resourceful, and whole. And sometimes with our best intentions, when we feel, oh, we need to help someone, we're not actually allowing them to show their own strength and to show their own empowerment. So every time we think in our heads, oh, I need to help someone, a leader thinks, now wait a second. Is that person naturally creative, resourceful, and whole? Do I believe that every person is naturally creative, resourceful, and whole? It's another thing to walk beside someone and be of a support. And it's another thing to think, oh, you can't do this on your own, so you need me. Leaders don't create dependent relationships. They create supportive relationships, but not dependent relationships, because they believe everyone is naturally creative, resourceful, and whole. Thank you so much for sharing this. If I could use one word to explain what you've just shared with us, I think that one word would be empowerment. So thank you so much. So I can see many hands up there, but let's hear from one other person, and then there will be opportunities afterwards. Lucy, I can see you first on my screen there.
Yes, I thank you for your talk. I think to reinvent, one, the reason, the cause that you're up to, what you're up to, must be so strong. And so the push must be so strong, like almost like when you're having a baby, a woman is having a baby. The pain must be so strong for you to accomplish what you want to do, that it propels you against fear and takes over from fear and makes you run. That's what reinvention to me looks like.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing that. You've actually stepped into another concept that I'm just going to offer here right now, because you speak about push. I want to offer a slightly different word, and it's pull. And to go back to your metaphor of having the baby, I whoever's had the baby can never forget that pain. So it's a pull, actually, out, which means that when we feel this is something I have to do, despite of all the risks, we feel pulled towards it. It invites us. It invites us so much that we cannot say no, even though we're stepping into pain. But we cannot say no, because it speaks to our values. It speaks to who we truly are from the inside. So thank you so much for sharing that. Okay, Janet, I can see you, and I just have to give you an opportunity to speak. Go ahead, share. Cool, there you go. Share with us, Janet, what's your view on all this?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I really appreciate you for these lectures. Well, I want to ask a question. Why is it that people are mistook or misunderstanding the person that is taking risk? That when you maybe you want to effect any change and people are not going along with you, what can the person do?
So if I understood you right, so what can we do when we're taking a risk because we want to create a change, and there are people who don't want to go along with us, right? So, you know, Janet, when you say that, here's a quote that comes to my mind. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to say it word by word, but I'm going to capture the sense. That world has been changed more by people who are ready to swim upstream than by those who are ready to swim along the stream. So changing our part of the world, whatever that part of the world is never easy. Because what feels kind of safe is that conformity. We've always been doing it that way. Well, everybody does it that way. Well, don't stick out. Up to the thing that the voice in our head can be, well, who are you to do that? Who are you to change that? And if there is a passion for us to do something, if we really want to introduce change somewhere, for a number of reasons, we're going to speak about it a little bit later on, because there's something that we see and we don't like, or because there's something that we would like to see and it's not existent, or because something that we would like to see more of. So whatever invites us, if it's based in our values, in our passion, it's worth the risk. And believe me, Janet, even if not the whole community is following you, but you feel that change, you need that change, then that change is needed. There was another thing that I've learned. If you need it, it's needed. Maybe you're not going to get the whole audience following you. Maybe there will be people who will say, no, that's not good. Maybe there will be people who will not even notice you, but there will definitely be some of your allies who will support you in that change. The question here, I don't think it's who's going to follow me. I think the question here is, why does this matter to me? What's important about this to me? And once you're clear on that, there will be people who will follow, who will help you co-create that. So I'm just going to mute you for a second, Janet. I'm going to understand these horns as a sign of yes, let's go for the change, even if we don't have the whole audience supporting us. So being conscious of the time, and we're going to come back to your questions and to your discussion. Let's just see here, because we're speaking now in the first part of this lecture, we're speaking about authentic leadership. Who am I as a leader, and how do I bring to the surface that authentic leadership? So here is another concept for you to think about. Just like it's human for us to be afraid of some of the things, it's human for us to want to know the answers to everything. If I take that risk and go after that change, will everything work out? Or what are the exact steps? You know, so it's normal, it's human for us to wanting to know the answers. And leadership is so much more about asking the right question. So many times, much more important in leadership is to be able to ask the right question. And then the right answer will come along. So here are, on a very general note, here are the 4 questions that I believe every authentic leader needs to ask himself or herself to be able to understand, who am I really? And what is it that I'm really bringing through my leadership? The first question is, what am I here for? Or in other words, what's my purpose? Why? I think Hamisa actually mentioned before, why? Why? Why me? Why in this context? Why in this way? Why? Why am I here for? The second, and that has to do a lot with our values. We find the answer to that question in our values. What is it that matters most to me? What is it that I cannot be with? What is it that I'm seeing and I want to change? Because it either goes against my values or because it reinforces my values. Now, once we have that question opened up, there's another one opening up immediately. Where am I going? Another word for this is vision. Where am I going? What's that place to which I'm going? What's my vision? If we want to understand our leadership seriously, we need to have a vision. And sometimes I work a lot with different contexts, corporate context, and somehow vision has been hijacked by corporate people thinking, well, you have vision and strategy in corporate world. No, you have vision as a human being. We have visions as human beings. We don't need structures to have visions. I have a vision of what kind of childhood I'd like to be present in my country. I have a vision of what kind of legal system I'd like to have in my country. I have a vision of what kind of connection I'd like to have in the whole wide world among people. We all have vision. And it's important that we become conscious of that vision, because that's going to tell us where is it exactly that we're going with our leadership. And then when we open that question, there's another one opening up. Who am I being along the way? So I have a vision that everybody goes on a leadership development journey. And who am I being along the way? I hope I'm being a very connecting person with different groups that I meet, such as you here today. Revealing a part of myself to you, revealing my heart, showing my passion, showing what I know and what I believe, and accepting what you know, what you believe, hearing your views so that we can all grow wiser. Who am I being along the way has to do a lot with how am I connecting as a leader with other people? How am I ready to accept them and their views? And finally, how am I acting along my path? Remember that I mentioned Ronald Heifetz at the very beginning as an authority in teaching leadership. Well, that person said that leadership is very much about how we act when leadership is needed. One very simplistic story. There was a crossroads somewhere in the US with very crowded morning when suddenly the traffic lights stopped working and there was a mess. Nobody knew where to go and there was a complete mess. There was a guy sitting somewhere on the street looking at that mess from a side and actually realizing that this is not going to get sorted out because everybody was too nervous, too self-centered. They all wanted to get on time somewhere. Nobody was taking care about anyone. And this guy suddenly stands up, goes in the middle of the crossroads and starts showing. He was a leader in that moment. Why? Because he acted when it was needed for the people who were there. We don't need labels to be leaders. We don't need status to be leaders. The only thing we need is to be present with our communities and act when we feel leadership is missing or leadership is inviting us. So, I'm going to just briefly now show you this is the concept from my book, which basically summarizes my learnings about leadership. I'm calling it SOUL because it has the first letter, so it's an acronym of self, other, universe, and legacy. When we speak about authentic leadership, we mostly speak about this right-hand side, self and other, who we are, what our values are, what's our value-based vision that we want to bring, and how is it that we want to connect to other people to create something bigger than us. But once we go on that journey, there is a point where we feel what I call an identity shift. And that's when we're stepping into this universe and legacy. I've called it universe, but in fact, it's the world, it's our community, it's where we live and what we see around us. And here is the point when we start thinking, when we kind of go from authentic leader into servant leader, when we start thinking, what is it that the world around me needs? And how is it that I can act? So I've put it this way: we develop from an authentic visionary leader who focuses on a personal value-based vision for oneself to a servant warrior who creates a vision-based contribution for one's world. So knowing ourselves, learning about ourselves, not to become self-centered, but to become of service to our world. So stepping into our authentic leadership to be able to transform that into our service to the world. Because if our leadership does not stand for our service, then what is leadership really about? Any questions so far? So I can see some hands. I'm just going to unmute some other people. Joanne, I do apologize if I'm not pronouncing your name right. Joanne Sigu.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly well.
Yeah. Zana, I think someone asked a question, and mine wasn't a question. It was just in reference to the earlier conversation about leadership. It was just an incident I bumped with a friend on Saturday, and she's one of the top leaders in the African Union. And she was saying, John, as much as they hold one of the top seats, it so happens when I walk in a room, it's like no one recognizes me. And it's something that really bothers her. But when we did a deep dive, what we find out is, one, there's structures as well, because you're saying for them, it's about the positions. I'm one of the top executives, so everyone needs to sort of bow down when I'm around. And so she wouldn't understand why people wouldn't be bothered as much as she's a top leader when she walks in a room. No one even recognizes that she's there. And so for me, it was about how can you come back to the ground level? Do you spend time even to say hi to people, or is it just about, I am the boss, I am the leader? So you're rubbing it on everyone's.
Mm-hmm. So I'm now having troubles in hearing you, Joanne. I think you're back.
As much as she was saying this, so in essence, she was just saying, as much, I was just trying to tell her that as much as the structures are so tight, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Go ahead.
Yeah, as much as the structures are so tight, the senior executive was sitting on the uppermost floor and the lower people lower and lower. I was like, you can change that narrative. There's no one stopping you from saying we can work in one cohesive environment. And for me, what I told her is respect is earned. Just because you have a big label and you work for the African Union, people will not bow down to you because of the title. But when they know you and when you are authentic from deep down and your leadership is coming from down up, it's going to be very easy for them to listen and for you to earn the respect that you deserve. So for me, this is quite powerful. It's quite powerful. But also, and it goes along the question that was asked, how do we make sure that power does not get into your head and it's not you rubbing power all over? I am for example, I am the women representative, or I am a member of parliament. I deserve for people to listen to me, and you just stay authentic towards your calling. Yeah, I think that's a question someone asked, but I think would be very important to handle.
Yeah. So I think as an answer to that question, there is one distinction that we have to make. And here is the distinction, the way I'm seeing it. So you can tell me afterwards whether it makes sense for you. So there is the leadership from a formal authority position that we talk about. And there is a leadership from an acting position that we talk about. So to make things simple, our positions do not necessarily make us leaders. They do make us formal leaders, but that's not a guarantee that we are actually going to practice, exercise, and show up as leaders. It would be super lovely if everyone who is on a formal position would actually be a true leader. It would be a much better world around us. So what does that tell us? That tells us this. If we get to a formal position, to not forget our responsibility to learn, and our responsibility to connect, and our responsibility to serve. And if our life context and circumstances are such that we never get to a formal position, to not forget that we are still leaders who can make impact, even without a formal power. If we don't look at things this way, we're just going to reduce leadership to formal positions. And that's going to leave the rest of us feeling very helpless and powerless. So somebody asked before, how do you get close to people without pleasing people or something like that? Excuse me if I did not, if I'm not quoting the question right. So here is another thing in leadership development that we learned. What does it mean to relate to people, and what does it mean to please people? Because these are two different things. So in relating to people, we have power with people. I can be a functional leader, having my team, relating to these people and sharing leadership and having power with those people, as opposed to giving my power away and pleasing them, or as opposed to putting my power over and controlling and commanding. So just notice the difference of a leader, of a true leader who relates for the sake of a vision. And no position in reality can actually mean getting away from people and not relating to these people. Because in that way, we're never going to be able to enroll people in anything. I always like to speak about the difference between management and leadership. And I like to ask the first question: who wants to be managed? Who wants to be managed? If you ask us, do I want to be managed? Nobody wants to be managed. But who wants to be led? That's a different story. There's a different energy to it. There's a different type of relating to it. If I feel that I'm managed, I almost feel that I'm less of. But if I feel that I'm led, I feel that I'm being invited to share the vision with someone and help them create that vision. So I hope, Joanne, that this kind of makes sense in terms of how do we show up when we have a formal position. And there's always one thing that I would like to add to that. This is what I've learned, and it helped me a lot in my own leadership, to learn the power of compassion. So people will sometimes show up not out of bad intentions, but simply because that's how they've learned. That's how they think you expect them to show up. That's how they've always been showing up. So having compassion and patience as leaders to slowly teach people a different way, role modeling that you can be a leader in a different way. I think it's very important for us to try and change our corner of the world through role modeling a different kind of leadership. So I am aware of the time. So I'm just going to go quickly through the slides. So this is basically when we differentiate the formal leadership and the fact that we're all leaders. I like to say that leadership is not a matter of power, it's a matter of concern, right? So rather than thinking, I don't have a position, so I'm powerless, we think, I can bring that change as well, because it concerns me, because I feel that it's needed, and that gives me the authority. to try and move things. I think Julia is going to share the presentation with you, so I'm not going to go through this, but I'm just going to stop for a moment here at the very last slide, which has 3 questions that I'd like you to take with you and have a little, give it a little thought, seeing what they unlock in you. What is it that you're questioning in your world? And when we say questioning, it's like, I like that. I want more of it. Or, I don't like it. I wish that could change. Or maybe this is what we're missing. Maybe somebody would need to create it. So what are some of the things that you're noticing in your environment? You're questioning them and you feel like they're inviting you for a certain change. What's your underlying concern there? Why are you noticing these things? What's happening for you when you notice these things? And how does that thinking shape your contribution? Or in another simple word, what are you ready to do about it? What's the invitation for you there? So being absolutely aware of the time, Julia, can we at this point sort of unmute everyone and just see if whoever wants to share for the very last minute, some of your comments or questions or observations? Or I'm just going to do it just like this to those people who raise their hands. And let's see
I'd like to comment, if I may.
Yes, Lorna. Yes, go ahead.
I love writing, and I feel that Africans are not writing their stories as much as they should. We have amazing stories. We sit around their fires and rooms and laugh and talk, but we never really put it down in writing. And so that concerns me when I walk into a bookshop and see books from the rest of the world and not from African writers. So I'd like to encourage African writers to write more, and I'd like to set an example by writing more myself. Yes, after this talk.
Yes, wonderful, wonderful. I just wanted to say, I can imagine the book cover already with your name there and sharing all the powerful stories from Africa and African women to empower women all over the world.
Yes.
Wonderful, beautiful. Thank you, Lorna, for sharing that. Anyone else wishes to share something? Joyce, I'm going to unmute you and Salome.
Hello, my name
is Salome.
Joyce.
Oh, Salome. Hello, Salome.
Hello. I'm sorry, I cannot put on my video because I'm in a public place, but I really appreciate what you've done today. I've seen your video, and we're asking on how we can get your book. And also, I think we've not heard enough of you because there are a lot of comments today. So if our professor would give you another chance for you to come again and complete what you have not, because I know you have not completed through your video, you have a lot to tell us.
Yeah.
And of course, I also support the lady who spoke about women writing in Africa. I think I should also write something because I have a lot in my head. Thank you very much.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you, Salome. And just for you to know, whenever Julia finds the opportunity, I will be there, because this speaks to my soul to have these words, to put them out there, and then to see how empowered people get after this to push their own change, their own projects, to start noticing what's needed in their world and their life, and to be ready to step into their leadership and do it. Thank you, Salome. Thank you. And Joyce, do you want to share something? Because I think that you started speaking before. No? Okay. So if not, then I'm going to switch to Kate. Kate, maybe you want to say something for the end?
Hi. Yes, I would. Thank you very much for that. I just wanted to share my experience with someone who asked about how they would know that people will support them. In an organization that we have here that has a slogan of community collaboration through garbage collection, my mind tells me, I mean, I'm like a train driver. So with many, many stops, but the goal or the destination is very clear. I have a strong belief that at every stage, someone will get on board, others will descend back. So we just focus on the goal, where to go, and not too much on what is happening that is so negative. So it's about hope and confidence and knowing and just doing the right thing, irrespective of who is watching or who is listening or who is, just stick to that, because you know that goal is very clear. But thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kate. And this is so such a lovely message to end with. So when you said that, Kate, there is a word that kind of got distilled for me, and that is passion. When we're passionate about something, when we have a goal, we want to create it, we're passionate about that, people will get on board. We will be able to enroll people because they will see the passion in us, and that passion will enroll them. That passion is contagious to not just enroll them, but empower them to jump on board and contribute to the change. So one thing which is super important at the very beginning, and it links to authentic leadership, we need to find our passion. We need to find that pull. We need to find what matters most. And then stepping into risk will be almost a natural thing to do. Thank you very much. I really enjoyed, and somebody was right there. I could be speaking for hours now because there's so much more. And here we go. Julia, over to you.
I mean, Zana, I knew that you were good, but this was just, I mean, I know that it exceeded the expectations, not just for me, but for everyone here. I had so many things written down that I wanted to share at the end, but honestly, I'm just speechless at this point. I know that you said we all should have our personal visions, and one of them was for you to empower people, especially 170 women that we have today here in this class. So I want to congratulate you, Zana, because you did. You empowered, I believe, all of us. I did see the pictures, and I had the possibility to see the faces behind and some emotions that were triggered, even for myself. Being in this class is just, and when I say this, I mean this, it's such an honor because I'm very young. Someone believed in me, someone believed I could guide or lead, or I don't even know what I am in this class, but I just know that I'm so empowered by this session. And thank you, truly thank you. And I want you to publicly confirm that we can have a cup of coffee so I can take my little notes and get all the questions that I have written down.
Yes, I'm publicly confirming, yes.
All right, perfect. Well, thank you again. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you from all of our students. Thank you from the university. And please, if you could just share where this question came up multiple times, where can we buy your book so we can get the answer?
So I can share the links for Amazon. I can actually maybe share them with you, Julia, and then people can get it there, or shall I put them in a chat?
I mean, you can copy paste it in the chat, and then as well with me later on, and then I can share it in a professional
website where you can actually download some of the chapters as well for free, and what I call Jumpstart Your Bold Leadership ebook, which has the main thoughts from the book. So you can get that from my website. And there's also a link where you can get a book on Amazon from website. It's available as a Kindle edition, and it's also available as a paperback that you can order. So Amazon would be the best bus stop there to get the book. And you can go to the website as well, where you can get a lot of my thoughts and a lot of the free ebooks that you can download. And I hope that they support you in your leadership. I want to say for the very end, it has been my honor to be with you today. Thank you so much.